please welcome Gloria Steinem.
Sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah. Oh, sometimes I get a good feeling, yeah. I get a feeling that I never had before. No, I get a good feeling, yeah.
Yes, I can. Doubt, believe I'm running with this plan.
You know, I had not been here for the other 14 years, okay? So I thought this was kind of a dinner with a speaker, you know. Right. I should have brought my tap shoes and my flaming baton, which I actually tried to tap dance my way out of Toledo with. Thank God I brought this jacket. You know, you all make Las Vegas look like a Quaker meeting. But with good politics. So I have been sitting there changing my notes about 20 times. I have 20 minutes. We're not entirely sure what's going to come out in these 20 minutes, you know. Because you've said everything. You've said everything. I mean, you all are fan-fucking-tastic. But obviously you have the right idea, because Emma Goldman always knew that if there was no dancing at the revolution, she was definitely not showing up, right? And I also want to remind us that it turns out that laughter is the only free emotion. You can compel fear, as we all know. You can also compel love if someone is kept isolated and dependent for long enough. We enmesh and believe we're in love in order to survive. But you cannot compel laughter. It happens when two things come together and suddenly make a third. When you learn something, when you understand something, no one can make you laugh, right? So laughter is a proof of freedom, and that's what you are proving tonight. And never, never, never hang out any place they won't let you laugh, including religious places, okay? So because you'd already said everything, I'm sitting there desperately writing on my napkin and carrying on and casting aside everything I was going to say before, because you know it, you've said it. But I thought perhaps you would be comforted a little bit by understanding that we are all on the right side of human history. And I don't just mean the future. Yes, we are on the right side of the future, but we are also on the right side of the past. Because the truth is, for most of human history, there was not a paradigm of a hierarchy, it was a circle. And people understood that human beings were linked. We were not ranked. It turns out that gender and race and class and caste, as in India, are relatively recent inventions in human history. If you go out in the desert with the Kwe and the San in southern Africa, from whom we all came, the ancestors of all of us, they do not have he and she, they don't have gendered pronouns in their language. A human being is a human being. What a concept. And the same is true on this continent of ours. If only we began human history when humans started, we would know that before Columbus showed up, the 500 or 600 cultures that were here seem to have been about balance, about a circle, about connection, and their languages also, Cherokee and other languages, did not have gender. So in blowing up the bifurcated gender idea, we are actually returning to our full human nature, each of us. And I think it helps to know what it comes from, right? What the parallels, why it is that all of our movements are so deeply, deeply, inextricably connected. And that is because what we call patriarchy came along in many different forms, but in every form, its whole point was to control reproduction. And that meant controlling female bodies. And you cannot, half the human race cannot control the other half without aggression and internalized oppression, which is so painful, and even violence. And those are the systems in many different forms that we have been looking at for the last, depending on the part of the world, only 600 years where we are now on this land, but no more than 5,000 years any place in the world. And once you have one half of the human race supposedly subordinate to the other half, if you also have a structure of racism or caste, as in India, or class, then you have to restrict reproduction even more to maintain a separation of races, the quote-unquote purity of race or caste or class. So it has always, always been true that race and sex and caste and class are intertwined. You can't uproot one without uprooting the other. It is not possible to be a feminist without also being anti-racist. And it is not. And, you know, sometimes the nature of the connections, the clear connections of our movements may seem less evident. I know when I'm on campuses sometimes, students will say to me, why is it that the same groups are against contraception and lesbians? Seems counterintuitive to them, right? But the fact is it is not. It is not. Because the whole idea of patriarchies is that sexuality is only okay when it can end in reproduction. So the idea of love and caring and affection and sexual pleasure between two men or between two women is as condemned as contraception, safe and legal abortion, which has been going on forever too, thousands of years as well, is also condemned. And once we see that interlinkage, I think we understand why our adversaries are all the same. Sometimes I worry that our adversaries understand our linkage better than we do, right? Because of course our movements have grown up in different times and different ways. Each of us needs to, who have been invisible, needs to stand up and say, here I am, here's what I look like, here's my name, here are my issues. And only then do we begin to see this linkage. But I hope now we profoundly, profoundly understand why our movements are all one big movement and we are each other's natural allies. Now, I really don't know whether I should address the current election or not, because we've had it already, right. But I do feel that since I come from New York, I have to apologize for Donald Trump. Who is a caricature of the racist, classist, patriarchal bullshit that it's sort of convenient, isn't it? Don't you think, to have it all in one guy? I mean, However, I notice that in public opinion polls, when those who support him say why, they say it's because he is a successful businessman and therefore he can lead the nation. So I just want to say from the bottom of my New York heart, he is not a successful businessman. He is a con man. If he had just invested the money he inherited as a rich kid, he would be richer than now. He has gone bankrupt, we don't know how many times. The banks don't want to deal with him. He is, he should be hospitalized, not elected, actually. But I do believe that the despair and ludicrousness of this election has also brought the full force of the few people, it's no more than a third of the country at the most, that believes his and supports his racist, sexist, homophobic bullshit. That's right. And in a way, as Gandhi used to say in situations like this, the truth is revealing itself, right? So we see in this person who came up through media, not through a political party, and the media, I think, is having and should have a lot of soul searching about this, because they gave him $2 billion in free advertising because he brought numbers in terms of viewers, and that translated into advertising. But he came up through the media, and he has shown us that third of the country that is in full rebellion against the idea that they were not born into some superior position because they were male, because they were white, because they were heterosexual, for whatever set of reasons. It is not the majority of men or white folks or hetero, but it is a very scared backlash minority that we are dealing with, and we have to know that. And it is at a kind of peak of resistance now for a lot of reasons. I mean, partly is because we're winning, And it also is because in very short order, just a few years, this country will no longer be a majority white European American country anymore. Which seems to me kind of great, right? I mean, we're going to be more connected to the rest of the world. We're going to have more diverse and interesting cultures. We're going to have better food. But to people who have grown up believing that they have a birthright that says they have a place in the hierarchy above other people, it's very, very upsetting, and it is upon them. I mean, the first generation that is majority babies of color have already been born, right? And the great victories, the great courageous victories of the gay and lesbian and transgender communities it's already there, right? I mean, we have a little distance to go, but they know, these folks know that it's already there. So it is a time of danger, because nowhere is it written that the majority wins. I mean, in the depth of my looking at Trump, I try not to remember that Hitler was elected on a low voter turnout. No. But it is true that we have the majority, and that our consciousness change, the change in our hopes and dreams, the understanding that we as human beings are linked and not ranked, is beginning to take us in a new way toward the place we were in for 90% of human history, but in a new way. And that is our future, and that is our dream, and that will be our reality if each of us stays connected, supports each other, understands the connections between and among our movements and our desires and our goals, and we will get there. But it is I don't know what, I missed it, but whatever it was, it must have been good. 2020. Listen, you wait. Okay, I am going to live to 100, but I am 80. I have to say I am 82 years old, because we have to. We have to have age liberation too, right? But the backlash is there, and it is not without its danger. It is very important to remember that if you add up, for instance, all the forms of violence against females around the world, whether that is domestic violence in this country, which has already cost more American lives than all the terrorism and 3 wars in Iraq and Afghanistan combined, or whether it is the greater value for male babies' lives in much of Asia that means there is a son surplus and a daughter deficit, or whether it is female genital mutilation, or honor killings, or sexualized violence in war zones. All of those things added up mean that for the first time, there are fewer females on planet Earth than there are males. And so we must look at the danger at the same time that we understand the possibilities. And I think that my paradigm of change, the paradigm of violence is family violence, right? I mean, the paradigm of everything is the family. And until we have democratic families, we're not going to have a democracy. We have to grow up understanding that we are linked, not ranked. We have to know that as children. We can overcome that, of course we can, but it takes time, and we need to free ourselves as early as we possibly can. And because violence in the family is necessary to control reproduction, once you have the false notion of masculine dominating feminine, then you have some degree of dominance and even violence, and it normalizes other violence. So the truth is that the single element that most predicts whether a country will be violent inside itself, in its streets, in its own neighborhoods, or whether the country will be willing to use military violence against another country, is actually, the biggest indicator is actually not poverty, not access to natural resources, not religion or even degree of democracy. It's violence against females, because that normalizes the idea that one group is born to dominate another. So we are all here in the service of uprooting the crazed politics that depends on controlling reproduction, controlling women's bodies, and pretending that sexuality is only a means of reproduction, as opposed to a way that human beings have always reached out to each other and expressed love and caring and connection. So, part of my assignment here was to explain those connections, which I'm so overjoyed to do. They say that God is in the details, maybe. But the goddess is in connections. But my other assignment was to say how to create everyday rebellions. Okay, I think that everybody in this room is really expert at rebelling. I can see that, right? But I do think sometimes we still get into hierarchical thinking in our activism, and we start to say, what should we do, right? And we ask each other, as if there were, we get a case of the shoulds. And we get a case of thinking that change grows from the top down, when actually it's like a tree, and everything in nature, it grows from the bottom up. So I think we have to remember to never worry about what we should do, but do whatever we can. Change our language, broaden our friendships, object to injustice in everyday life, support the weakest among us, challenge the strongest among us, and make sure that we do our best to do what we say and mean what we say. We need to understand not that the means are the ends. Marx and Engels were very nice guys. But I think that they got a little distracted by the idea that the ends justify the means, which kind of did them in, when in fact the means are the ends. So if we want kindness and joy and poetry and dancing and equality at the end, we have to have kindness and joy and poetry, dancing every day. We have to do our best to reflect what we want in the future in what you and I are doing absolutely every day of our lives. And this means not only raising our daughters more like our sons, but our sons more like our daughters. We know that in a kind of general way, female human beings tend to gain full humanity when we're not so confined to the home, but are also active outside the home. But we forget that males gain their full humanity when they are raised. Whether or not we have children is not the point, but that males are raised to raise children as females are raised to raise children, because then they too develop all their human qualities. They develop patience and kindness and compassion and attention to detail and all those things that are wrongly called feminine. And this community is on the forefront of that. is on the forefront of that because you know that gender is bullshit, right? And you know that race is bullshit. So you are so much the pioneers and the models for what the whole country needs to learn. And I am so grateful for that. And I also think we need to understand that we are not asking to be included for our good. We are asking to be included for the good of the country and the world. I figured out once that we were choosing our national leadership in this country by eliminating all the females, by eliminating people of color, by eliminating everybody who wasn't heterosexual, by eliminating everybody who couldn't purchase a college degree. And when we're finished with that, we have been choosing for 200 years plus from 10% of the country. No wonder we are in such deep shit. Okay? So I'm grateful to President Obama and to everyone who he has been a great president, and Michelle has been a great national leader. In spite of the fact that he has been facing a racist right wing that is so deeply racist that if they had cancer and Obama had the cure, they wouldn't accept it. And now we have the opportunity to see that female human beings also are leaders. Not just because they are female. I would not vote for Sarah Palin. But because of the content, right? Because they stand for the majority rights and for equality. That's why. And if that is the case, then if the content is there, then the fact of growing up and walking around in this nation as an African American person is incredibly, irreplaceably valuable. And the fact of growing up in a female body and knowing what that's like is incredibly helpful. And that is what we have in these two leaders, and that will make a huge, huge, huge difference. Now, there's one, I have to say, I think I'm over my time, but I have to say one, I brought a watch, does it, right? What, I have to say one word about the fact that all of this attention to Trump has drowned out somehow the tragedy of the fact that Hillary Clinton, who has many times been elected the most admired woman in the world, is now regarded with the same degree of mistrust as Richard Nixon. And we have to understand, I think, why that happened. And if we think about it, we know, right? It's the false equivalency of the media that says negative and positive questions are equally divided, time is equally divided, which elevates him and downgrades her. It is the old tactic of swift boating. Do you remember when John Kerry was a presidential candidate, right? The tactic is to attack not the weakness but the strength. So they attacked his heroism in the Vietnam War, not his weakness. And with Hillary, because absolutely every fact-checking service there is says she is the most accurate and the most honest, they are attacking her as crooked Hillary, right? Then there is the fact that men disobey authority and it's okay, but women disobey authority and it's really bad. So You know, I would like to publish a entire book of her emails, because they show her to be incredibly expert and hardworking and getting up at 6 and dealing with all this complexity. The problem is not the content of the emails, it's that she disobeyed instructions by having a server in her basement. Hello? You know, I mean, we now know that the Russians can hack anything, you know, so why is this, why is this so important? And in general, you know, she is held to an entirely different standard. And I think there's one more thing here we need to think about, because it's another thing that will be erased by shared parenthood when we see both women and men as equally loving and nurturing. And that is because most of us are raised mostly by women still, even though there are many, you know, 2 men raising children, 2 women. I mean, you know, much has changed, and there are many nurturing fathers now, but still most of us are raised by women, and we associate female authority with childhood. As we see it as overwhelming, as emotional, as nurturing, as many things, and it doesn't seem appropriate to public life and adult life. We, as females, have maybe our own example to the contrary, but I think looking at my friends, my grown-up male friends in the press and how badly they behave, that I think that they, when some of them see a powerful woman, they unconsciously feel regressed to when they were 8, because it's they feel unmanned, you know, because it's the last time they saw a powerful woman. So it's going to take us a while to get over all that, but we are definitely on the way. We are on the way because of the courage and the honesty and the compassion and the support and the humor and the laughter of every one of you in this room. I am so, so grateful to you for reflecting the future of this country and reflecting the victory in this next election, okay? And I just want to say one final thing about the family, which is I think that the violence in it also is the paradigm of all other violence. So we understand that when perhaps a man, usually it's a woman, is about to escape from a violent household, a violent partner, that is the time when she is most likely to be murdered or badly hurt, just before escape or just after escape, because she is escaping control, right? Okay, I think in a way this is true of this country right now, because we are about to escape. There is a lot of danger, and we need to take care of each other and keep our connections precious and understand we are all one movement. But it is also true that just as we wouldn't tell a woman to return to a violent, or anyone to return to a violent household, we are not going back. It is also true that we are about to be free. Thank you.